Loser is markets because of quantitative easing.
The markets that have to get off drugs, basically.
Okay, most contrarian belief. Sacks, why don't you tell us your most contrarian belief, since I'm sure that you workshop this with the contrarian Peter Thiel himself. It never ends.
Yeah, I mean, so I have a couple of them here, actually.
You want to wait and go after everybody else?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
I don't even know if this is contrarian or just unconventional, but I think that all of this pressure on the progressive left will manifest in the chosen one, AOC, deciding to step up and run against Schumer in the primary in June of 2022. And she will lose.
Wow.
That's a good prediction.
I like Chamath's prediction.
That's a bold one, yeah. That she would lose is bold.
Well, sorry, just to give a little bit of color in this, like let's just assume that she doesn't, right? And you know, she shouldn't. But think about where she's sitting. Build Back Better is over. There's an enormous amount of stuff happening right now where, you know, it looks like the progressive left is really going to be put under pressure. And it's almost as if she's really going to be the standard bearer and she needs to do something quickly. Otherwise, she's going to have to wait until she's 38. You know, she's, you know, another 6 years from now, because it's not unlikely that she's going to run against Kirsten Gillibrand. So this is kind of like, it may be a moment where out of her sheer frustration, she steps up. And then we will see whether Friedberg is right or I'm right, whether the populism is really around the left or the populism is really around the silent majority.
What do you got? Sacks.
I think that's a very good prediction. In a similar way, I predict that there will be a strange new respect for Bill Clinton in the Democratic Party by the end of next year. Why? Because after the red wave, there'll be a recognition that they need to move towards the center. They need to triangulate. And Clinton was the one who provided the formula for doing this. He dragged the Democratic Party back to the center after they were losing elections. And the other piece of this is going to be that it's already the case in polling that Hispanics and Asian Americans now are swing voters. And I think you're going to see in November 2022 that they go for Republicans in big numbers. And so the idea that the Democratic Party can just coast to election based on demographics, I think that theory is going to be imperiled.
Yeah,
and
I
so,
like it.
So they're going to be looking to Clinton and maybe not so much Obama as as sort of the predicate they should be, you know, aspiring to in the future.
I think what's important about that is those groups of people, I think, are offended by the free money, get something for nothing. They're hardworking immigrant people who have pride. They don't want handouts. And then you have this left, white, liberal maniac saying, no, you're poor. You need handouts. You shouldn't work. You need handouts. And I just think they don't buy it. And that's why I think they're going to go to the Republicans, because Republicans are hardworking and freedom loving.
And what was Clinton's big tagline in his campaign? He said that he supports people who work hard and play by the rules. That was that. So
great.
That's the message the Democrats got to refine. Right now, they seem to be on the side of basically drug addicts. I mean, you know, people who
junkies
are contributing nothing and pitching tents in the middle of public spaces and, you know, participating in open air drug markets.
Yeah. What do you got, Friedberg?
And sore losers. Don't forget sore losers.
Yeah. And hysterical. Friedberg?
And hysterical people.
Yeah, I mean, being hysterical, just never good look.
If you'll bear with me, I have three, but I couldn't really pick. So the first one is, I think, and I shared this on the pod the other day, I think we'll see the start of great global conflict. We often rationalize the series of events that catalyze conflict after the fact, rather than recognizing that there was emotional conditioning that allowed it to arise in the first place. I think we're in a state today where the conditioning is such that we're more inclined to engage in conflict globally than we have been in a very long time. I don't know if it's kind of the conflict meter or what have you, but you know, you could see proxy wars and proxy conflicts that arise, sort of like what we're seeing, you know, maybe something in the Ukraine, maybe something related to Taiwan. But this is primarily predicated by the fact that we've got kind of this inflationary environment, and the rise of populism will force the kind of domestic policymakers and legislators to say we should do something that's active and something that will allow us to unite our nations to go and get into a conflict somewhere, or more likely to do that than not. And so I would say that the conditioning is there to see something like that happen. And so we're not kind of thinking, hey, next year is going to be a year of war. And that's why it's contrarian. I think that there may be war that we're not kind of paying attention to today, or that will surprise us after the fact. The second thing is I'd say China may solidify its position next year, and this is going to sound a little crazy, as a leader in climate change mitigation, whereas it's historically been considered kind of the primary foe against climate change. And there's a couple of behaviors we've seen come out of China recently that I think, number one, remember, China's a very rational actor. They do analysis, they make decisions based on long-term investments and thinking. They recently announced that they're going to build 150 new nuclear reactors over the next 15 years at a cost of roughly $450 billion. That's about $3 billion per nuclear power plant. The US is currently spending $30 billion building 2 power plants in Georgia. So the Chinese have figured it out. They've also publicly declared that they're going to be completely carbon neutral with their economy by the year 2060. And they're making the investments through these nuclear power plants to demonstrate that they're actually on the road to do that. And there are a number of other infrastructure initiatives that are meant to help them achieve significant reductions in carbon by 2040. So let me just point out why this is important, because right now everyone thinks China's the foe. They're causing climate change. They're the biggest problem. Imagine if over the next year, some of what they're doing pays off and everyone says, my gosh, China is leading the world in climate change mitigation. Their influence socially and politically will rise. And this gives China a very strong kind of position, on the global stage and with kind of people around the world thinking, instead of China being a foe, maybe they're the leader and the US is the laggard. And that creates and my third is very random, which is some sort of natural catastrophe. We never account, all natural catastrophes are very low probability, but very high severity. If you multiply the probability by the severity, you have what's called the expected loss. We always undervalue the expected loss of massive catastrophes, natural catastrophes. We haven't had one in a while. It's a very low probability bet for me to say, hey, maybe we will. But if we do, it's certainly underappreciated in markets today. And so when these kind of, black swan type events occur.
Did you watch Don't Look Up on Netflix? Is that why you're coming up with this one?
What is that?
It's a new movie about
It's crap. Don't watch it.
It's polarizing. Let's leave it out for now.
Skip
okay.
Adam McKay directed it? I'll watch it.
It's crap.
My most contrarian belief is, I think this is contrarian, is that American influence and exceptionalism is going to soar. I believe
that is contrarian.
I think we've empowered this next generation. As I talked about earlier, millennials, Gen Z are ready to be independent, to build shit. And I think Gen X is going to start taking over from boomers, as is what's happening in this very podcast here as we start to hit
our
prime years as executives. And then all these boomers are retiring, as Chamath has pointed out over and over again, and they're going to pass down their wealth, which then creates a perfect storm of a ton of capital, a ton of energy, lots of new ideas, a different perspective. And the economy is going to boom, and we will prove once again that we're the greatest country and economy in the world.
JKL, you're not a contrarian. You're what we call an optimist.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll add to that.
JKL, what are we? Are we Gen X?
We're Gen X, yes. And the fighting over COVID, abortion, guns, social justice, and all this stuff is so exhausting. Not that these are not important issues, that I think everybody is going to move to, let's just start respecting and building and solving problems. And I just think American exceptionalism will be
all that happens in 2022. Wow.
I just think that is my contrarian belief for 2022. Everybody believes it's all
primary race. I
think everybody believes it's coming apart. I don't think anything's coming apart.
The whole arc of the next century in a year.
I think it's going to be a great year.
Can I give my second contrarian prediction?
Oh God, here we go.
Yeah, no, okay.
That's good.
Here it is. I think the media is going to pull a total 180 on COVID. Okay, so after pumping out COVID fear porn for 2 years, they're going to change their tune next year. Some of the things you're going to hear: we need to live with COVID; it can't be eradicated. They're even going to say it's more like a cold or a flu. They're going to say that politicians can't be expected to stop it. They're going to memory hole their support for lockdowns. We never supported that. And why is all of this? Because we have an election next year, and more Americans have already died from COVID under Joe Biden than Donald Trump. That's a pretty amazing
memory hold? What was your term?
Yeah, you've never heard of the term memory hole? It's what the press does.
Memory hole. I think you said hold. Memory hole. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But did you guys know that more Americans have already died from COVID under Joe Biden than under Donald Trump?
That
is stunning. Yeah, it is stunning.
Are you sure?
Yeah. 100%. Now,
his writers triple fact checked it.
Yeah, they did.
No, look it up. And it's going to be even more true
after this. It's on Infowars.com. You can look it up.
Omicron wave. Now, look, I don't blame Joe Biden for that.
Sorry, wait, why is that? Because Trump had no vaccine and Biden has had vaccines and everything else.
And maybe it's the consistency of the number of people.
Have you guys seen we've had a consistent, 1,000 to 2,000 people die a day?
Yeah, it's been 1,400 a day. So maybe it's just that consistency.
In the US, yeah.
I think it's because of the Republican states that refuse to do any mitigation.
Okay, let's keep going.
Look, I don't blame Biden for that. I don't blame any president of the United States. Nonetheless, Biden campaigned on the idea of he's quote unquote shutting down the virus. He and the Democrats claimed that they would be able to eradicate it. That was the entire basis for all these COVID restrictions. Now it's the case that it can't be done. Everyone's realizing that they're going to have to move the goalpost and memory hole ever saying that. And so the Democrats desperately need COVID to be over for the 2022 midterms. Therefore, the media will say it's over.
Well, you started to see it already because the media is probably scratching their head. They were the ones trying to force these lockdowns, basking in the glow of whatever press release the Centers for Disease Control would put out. And all of a sudden, the CDC just had to do a complete 180. And when they used to force 10-day quarantines for these positive tests and people with COVID, they just backtracked to 5. And why? Well, it's because there's nobody to work.
And the Delta CEO asked for it last week. And now I don't know if that's exactly true,
and
but
the
they're
CDC
saying
ultimately really is just in the hands of big business. And so when big business needs these workers to come back, and it probably pissed off a lot of unions who would have loved to have just had a positive test and stay home forever, the teachers unions particularly. Here we are. So This is a really tough situation.
Well, and look, and to be clear, the message that the media is going to deliver about COVID next year, it'll be the first time I agree with it. But it's completely dishonest of them to pretend like they were never in favor of lockdowns, and they completely inflated the threat and created this whole hysteria. And next year they're going to have to back off it.
But also take into account, Sacks, that this new variant is much less deadly. So it would be logical for people to take a less severe position on it.
No, hold on, Jason. We don't know whether there are more variants to come in the future that could be much worse.
But we
also
know this
don't know
one
what
is
could
not
be subsequently
as deadly,
leaked. So the
and
point
it's a blocker.
The CDC makes a decision, broadly speaking, about everything. They're not making a decision about Omicron. They didn't say if you have Omicron, because not as if they really even test for it.
I'm just talking big picture to Sacks' point.
The reason they shortened this is because they didn't know what they were doing before. They don't fundamentally know what they're doing now. They're making best guesses. And the problem with these best guesses is that they're inaccurate, and it forces enormous amounts of waves of havoc every time they make a decision.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Sacks' prediction that the media will flip. A logical person, including everybody on this call, because of Omicron taking over for Delta and being a natural blocker, it would be the logical thing to do. So in defense of the media, which I'm not apt to do, it's logical for everybody to take a different approach right now because Omicron is 40 times more contagious. It blocks Delta, and it's become the dominant variant.
I think that right now the media is confused. They're not sure which way to go. So, there's a high probability that they tack towards what Sacks is saying. But if you read the New York Times article, it was through gritted teeth they presented the fact that the CDC changed the guidelines.
Yes.
If you read that article, it was like pulling teeth.
What do you mean when you say the media? Can you just define that a little bit?
It's everybody but Fox News. Come on. It's the elite prestige media. It's the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, on and on and on.
Do you think there's a bigger audience with the aggregate of those publications you just mentioned, or the direct to the consumer publications that are happening on YouTube?
Of course, they're being disaggregated because of their dishonesty.
So does it matter?
Yeah, of course it still matters because they still have a lot of influence. They do.
And no offense to everybody on YouTube, but we haven't gotten yet to the economic viability where enough people on YouTube can cover the broad spectrum of things that are important, and then the mechanisms and incentives to amplify it. So, for example,
that's a good point.
We still need CNN. There was a woman on CNN, Nick, please post the clip that we posted in the group chat, talking about the incidence of suicide rates and depression in our children.
Super
and
powerful.
What happened when they were locked out of school for 2 years. Okay. And I am not going to stop talking about this because this is the issue of our times. These are our kids.
Well, I want to get to underreported stories as well. Jan?
Oh, for me, I mean, my kids hear me rant about this every day, so I may as well tell you guys. It's the crushing impact that our COVID policies have had on young kids and children. By far, the least serious risk for serious illness. But I mean, even teenagers, a healthy teenager has a 1 in a million chance of getting and dying from COVID, which is way lower than dying in a car wreck on a road trip. But they have suffered and sacrificed the most, especially kids in underrepresented, at-risk communities. And now we have the Surgeon General saying there's a mental health crisis among our kids. The risk of suicide attempts among girls now up 51% this year. Black kids nearly twice as likely as white kids to die by suicide. I mean, school closures, lockdowns, cancellation of sports. You couldn't even go on a playground in the DC area without cops scurrying, shooing the kids off. Tremendous negative impact on kids, and it's been an afterthought. Yeah. It's hurt their dreams, their future, learning loss, risk of abuse, their mental health, and now with our knowledge, our vaccines. If our policies don't reflect a more measured and reasonable approach for our children, they will be paying for our generation's decisions the rest of their lives. And that, to me, is the greatest underreported story of the past year.
And I don't see it being talked about anywhere. We talked about it first. I posted that link about the decrease in IQ points. Yep. And then we started to talk about it there slowly. And now it's trickling into the mainstream media where they're forced to talk about it.
And who's impacted? It's not rich kids.
It's
not middle class kids.
It's all of our kids.
That was a fantastic clip. That CNN clip was fantastic.
The poor kids are the ones who get hit the hardest. They can't do supplemental.
It's
they don't
not
have
just that.
Option.
Don't minimize what this is. This is every child.
I agree,
it disproportionately affects
hit. Yes.
The data was that it's disproportionately affecting minority kids,
yes.
Okay? And that could be because of the sociology of the parents. But Jason, you can also have rich colored parents, okay, Jay?
So I'm not just saying colored parents. I'm saying all poor kids, white poor kids who are in public school.
All poor kids.
They're getting hit the hardest.
Minority kids of all kinds. But frankly, the point is it's all kids of all kinds, okay?
Yes.
So we don't need to sub-segment this to make this issue go away and seem smaller than it is. We have literally put tens of millions of children at risk because of our behavior.
Yes. I'm agree with you, and I'm not trying to minimize it or make it a smaller issue.
Your point is that none of the smaller audiences or smaller new media folks on YouTube or their podcasting have enough breadth to really make an impact by talking about this topic? Is that what you're saying? That the mainstream media is needed to hit the broad base?
No. What I'm saying is very specific. The people on YouTube cover what the people on YouTube want. Okay, right. The people on podcasts cover what they want. They're all very narrow specialists.
You mean they're narrow niche?
Okay.
Yeah.
There is no set of incentives that then threads that together and then amplifies.
Right.
In the absence of those two mechanics,
right.
Those are software mechanics and economic mechanics that need to get built in. What we lose is signal.
Right.
That, in my opinion, right now, over the last 2 weeks, is the single most important signal. And it is nowhere except for this one clip on CNN and the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago.
Because the YouTube, I just want to be really clear on this. Because YouTube
is full of React videos and video games, which is fine.
And the consumer,
but what it's missing is talking about this issue and actually holding people accountable. And who should be held accountable? In every single county where it was basically a board of education that was trying to shut these kids out, who stood up and who told that story? Nobody did. And if it was trying to be told, it wasn't amplified correctly enough. And so what happens is after 2 years of damage to all of our kids, tens of millions of kids, there's a couple of fissures. One fissure was on this podcast, which I'm very proud of. Another fissure was this one few-minute clip on CNN.
CBS. It was a CBS.
Whatever.
It was a Sunday show, yeah.
But my point is, these are the things that really matter, and we haven't figured it out yet.
What you're saying, and I think it's a really important point, is that as a YouTuber, as a podcaster, you pick your niche that you can hit home on, and you hit home over and over every week. But no one says, I'm going to broadly talk about the issues of our time and make sure...
No, that's not true. We do.
We do, but it's a small subset. But I think the bigger picture here is that I'm going to dovetail with what Sacks
there's more
said.
than 1 million people a week that listen to this. We've far exceeded MSNBC's average viewership. We're probably going to pass, most CNBC shows and some CNN shows by the end of next year. So we will do it. But there's not enough. There needs to be more of us.
We're an opinion show as much, we're not a traditional reporting show, right? In the sense that go out, gather data and facts and present them, or do you disagree with that?
Not that they do that anyway.
I disagree with that. I disagree. I actually think we do a decent job of filtering for the truth. And the reason we're able to do that is because of our friendship. We can hold each other accountable and call out the bullshit when we see
because we don't have incentives. We don't have anything to lose, right?
I don't think there's an incentive here for us. But I want to build on something that Sacks said. See, it is very hard for the media to hold this dissonance because they're saying everybody needs to shelter in place. COVID is, this huge thing. They put the death count, they put the case counter up. They won't talk about deaths in ICU. They won't talk about who's getting COVID because they have an incentive to get more ratings through COVID or Trump. And they took that. And then it's a narrative violation or it's cognitive dissonance if they say at the same time, everybody needs to shelter in place. This thing is really deadly, but we should send our kids to school. So they couldn't take that position, Sacks and Chamath. They couldn't take the position that, kids could go to school because that would go against, hey, everybody needs to shelter in place. And they picked, I think, COVID is this super deadly thing. Everybody has to shelter in place over children.
I think you're giving them way too much credit. I think what happened was they had a position to re-aggregate lost power. And they took it.
That's real sinister.
And they did not think about the true consequences. And it may not have happened at any one individual reporter level, but when it ladders up to the editorial board and the decisions of the people who run the mastheads of these organizations, they made the decision that currying and organizing power was more important than shining a light to do the right thing. Specifically in this case, the thing that aggravates me the most is around our kids.
Yeah, I think they were going for ratings. But anyway, we can keep debating it.
Well, the one thing we can say for sure is they created a hysteria. Whether their motivation was ratings or a power grab or political advantage, there's probably all the above. But the bottom line is they wanted to create a hysteria. And they've been pumping COVID fear porn into the population for the last 2 years. But my prediction, like I said, is that it all flips next year. Why? Because there's an election, and the way the media figures out what its narrative is going to be is they start with the election result they want. And then they reverse engineer the narrative that they think is going to help achieve that election result. And if it means contradicting what they said yesterday, they will memory hole what they said yesterday in order to get on board with the new narrative. That is what's going to happen.
I do think you're right, but I think I don't want to lose this thread because this has nothing to do with COVID. Meaning COVID was a symptom of this. But if you really thought that the organized mainstream media had the right to be, has a purpose to be on the right side of justice, where were they when school boards were stripping out, advanced placement programs for kids? Or where were they when they were shutting kids out? Or where were they when they were engaged in 8-hour debates?
They can't go against the unions.
Whether a male can be on a committee, because he's gay but he's not, black. I mean, these were the issues that stopped our children from literally walking into the classroom every day.
Well, I mean,
those stories were not told, and they didn't happen just in one place. They happened all across the country. And this is where those folks had a responsibility because they also probably had kids and they didn't do a thing about it. That one issue for me really drives me crazy.
Let me ask a probing question here. We assume we're going to get out of this, pandemic in 2022, knock on wood, no more variants. What is the obligation and technique, the strategy to solve what we did to these kids? And I just want to put it out there. We don't have to answer it now, but I think we could spend an episode.
That's a very difficult question, J. Cal, that I think you need sociologists and psychologists and educators.
We also need entrepreneurship and ideas, and we need to have a dialogue so we can bring them on. But if we're going to spend all this money on Build Back Better, how about we build back the 20 lost fucking IQ points that these kids have, and then we do something about the depression and anxiety they have?
Hallelujah.
Jason, we're never going to get there because the teachers' unions won't even acknowledge that learning loss exists.
I think we need to break the teachers' unions, period, full stop.
Oh, let me make a prediction in that regard next year. There's going to be a ballot initiative in California for school choice. And the way it's going to work is that I think there's something like $13,000 spent per pupil in California.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the right number.
There's going to be a ballot initiative that says that any parent who wants to send their kid to an accredited school can get a voucher for $13,000 from the state. That's what's going to be on the ballot.
Competition, let's go.
I predict it will be the big election in California and maybe the nation next year. And I think more than $100 million will be spent on both sides of that thing. And I can't predict it's going to win. I hope it does.
This is a topic worth fighting over. This is something important to fight over.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's school choice. Because you know what?
Absolutely.
These guys pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. They slipped them the Mickey. They hoodwinked them. You need choice. We know this as entrepreneurs. If there is no competition, things do not get better. These school unions are complacent.
Well, let's make a resolution. Let's make a New Year's resolution because I think we all agree on this. I got approached about this ballot initiative.
Let's do it.
It's going to happen. There's going to be, like I said, a major ballot initiative next year for school choice in California.
Let's take some all-in summit money and put it towards that.
Let's get behind it.
All in Summit profits will put towards this.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's put I'm in. Let's put some money behind this.
I want to tell you just to more personalize this issue, because I really think a lot of people listening struggle with this. I entered the pandemic with rules. I had rules about devices. I had rules about, how much time they could be online. I had rules around physical fitness, right? I had rules around diet. And it all went out the window. And it became this thing where it was like, feed them the best they can. Sometimes they eat lunch with us. Sometimes they have to eat lunch by themselves because I'm stuck on some stupid Zoom, back to back in these dumb meetings because these kids aren't at school. Their only way to interact with their friends became video games like Fortnite, where they could at least talk to their friends.
Yeah.
But then it became an addiction where they were doing it for hours and hours.
Yep.
And now I'm trying to, and they gained weight because they weren't physically active. And I am trying to unwind, as is Nat, as is my ex-wife. We're doing it together as a team. It is so hard.
Absolutely hard. Yeah.
So hard. And
These
then
are addictions.
I think, what about all these people who don't have the access to the resources that I have to try to unwind this? And then what happens is I send my kids to this school and, they may have a headache. Guess what? They get sent home. And then their brother and sister have to get sent home too, until you can test and be COVID negative for a day in a row. And so there's yet another day of school loss.
Totally nuts.
And then it's like, this is supposed to be one of the best schools in the country. It's not.
Totally
And then
nuts.
I think, what is every other school like then? If this is what my children have to deal with.
I think we should have this as a major theme for 2022 for the pod. I think it's a very important
We need to hold
topic.
educators and teachers unions accountable.
Absolutely.
School boards accountable all around the country to fix this. This is your responsibility. You need to fix it.
Listen,
with
we
us.
held police officers responsible in the last year or two. We've seen this, policing being really like a spotlight put on it. Well, let's put that same spotlight on teachers and administrators and schools.
They'll never do it. They'll never do it without competition. That's the only way to hold. That's the only way to hold their feet to the fire.
You know what? What I learned, Chamath, to build on what you said, was I just decided to get a teacher, and obviously I have the means to do it. I know most people don't. I certainly didn't have it growing up. We could barely, afford to exist. But I think homeschooling is a viable option. So with that $13K, I can tell you 5 parents who are in an underprivileged area can take that 5 times 13 and take that, what is that, $65K, and put it together. And for $65K, they can hire a teacher. And they can do a better job with those parents and a teacher for those 5 kids. I guarantee it.